Boyana, and thank you to RESPA for hosting this webinar, and to both you and Maya who joined us in Paris at the launch of this alliance to also inform what the alliance should do with all the schools also in the network here. I am a very non-bureaucratic kind of person, so I will really want to start the discussion with some questions to our participants here before I go into my slides and all the stuff that I want to talk about. So if you allow me, I'll share my screen to animate a little bit of discussion around on a Mentimeter. So colleagues, if you can see my screen,
Yes.
the QR code there, you can scan it to on your phones to access it, or you can join using menti.com and use the code above, which is 84159517. And since it's a dialogue that we are having, we wanted to also get a sense from the room on how is AI being used in government in your country. And this would also perhaps facilitate exchange between several of you who are coming from different countries on what are the regional trends and so on and so forth. So what you need to do is just type in, it's a word cloud, so we'll all see your responses. And I'm very good with awkward silences, so I can wait an eternity for you to put in. So you are using systematically, responsibly. I see also in some languages that I don't understand. So Boyana, please feel free to jump in as well.
Okay, just we can wait maybe a little bit
Yes,
for
yes.
the answers.
And
And
while
how
you
are
are
you?
sorry, while you are typing the answers, feel free to also mention your country or also mention what kind of AI system is being used or what kind of tasks in government AI systems are being used. We hear some things about chatbots, but happy to kitchen recipes. uh,
I'm sure that we will have enough answers until the end of your presentation, especially until the end of the webinar, and maybe we can wait and see how many similar answers we will have here. But
sure.
non-regulated, I see. It is maybe the first issue. All of us are using different tools, but it is still not regulated, and it is still and there are a lot of questions. Did we do this on the right way, or what can be potential problem if we provide our personal data or our business data in open chatbots? And I think many open questions we can ask here.
Thanks. This is already helping us get a snapshot. For instance, a lot of you are saying in healthcare or health data. Some people are mentioning about use to check grammar and in writing for population register, for e-services, or searching and finding information. These are AI use cases. In a way, what we're talking about is generative AI cases, and generative AI is kind of different from the more traditional AI systems. Well, this gives us a bit of a snapshot. I will move to the next slide, where we would love to hear a little bit more about what do you see as the biggest barriers to AI adoption in the public sector? What in your region do you see are the challenges when it comes to adopting AI in the public sector? Okay, to learn about it. I guess we are starting in some shape or form that journey with RESPA here as well.
Maybe miss of regulation.
Lack of regulation.
Lack of regulation, yes. There are no, I think,
There are cultural barriers, skills, leadership, technical readiness.
many different tools. I
Yeah,
think the project there rather is also can help the region. The project was presented in UNESCO conference, but
Yes.
There are a lot of sources for using of AI, but I think we need some systematic approach. Budget
Right.
also I see as a answer.
Wow, that's a very interactive group here. Legislation is a challenge here as well. Interoperability is a big challenge. Leadership, regulation, security, legal issues, hardware. Okay, great. So colleagues, I'll stop sharing this. You still have access to the Menti, and please feel free to continue adding if you have more reflections. This is just for us to get a sense check of what we are talking about in the region, what are the big challenges, what are the different uses of AI in the region. Let me now dive into quickly some of these aspects with you today. And
Não, давай. Ima me bolje tušite, ne drugo.
It is necessary maybe to be muted.
okay.
And Patrick, you can continue with your
Yes,
presentation.
sure. So, colleagues, what we saw in your slides is something what we hear globally. So I'll come to some of the findings of the research that we have done as well today, but I'll briefly talk about the work that UNESCO is doing in terms of capacity building for AI and digital transformation in the public sector. Then I'll go a little bit into what are the different ways in which AI is being used in government. There are different kinds of tasks. And then we'll talk a little bit about the broader challenges, opportunities, and risks associated. So this is really an introduction. Many of you may be aware of some of these challenges, and then we'll hear more about capacity building and the course that we are developing with the University of Oxford from our colleague Caroline. And our colleague Miriam will then talk about what are the kind of profiles needed in the public sector to actually do all these tasks. As you saw in the poll that you shared, we are basically asking civil servants to be like superhumans. We need them to know a lot of these things. But what we try to do at UNESCO is with this competency framework on AI and digital transformation, try to define what are these skills. And I'll briefly talk about this competency framework in a moment. But what we've also been doing is develop develop training curricula, develop massive open online courses, develop repository of AI use cases, and so on. And the training curricula will come up in a few months from now. Moving on, I wanted to talk about what are the barriers to AI and digital transformation. So here you see cultural and organizational barriers. There is an aversion to experimentation and innovation in the public sector. There is low level of leadership support for innovative ideas. This is kind of reflected in what you mentioned in the barriers that you face. And we published this research in 2022 where we saw this is across the board in all parts of the world. I can speak about my organization, which also is a bureaucracy. There's a huge aversion to experimentation because there is this concern about, oh, well, we have to spend the budget, and then the budget has to lead to immediate concrete results. Any kind of move away from the target is a failure, which naturally doesn't incentivize any kind of experimentation. So how do we build a culture which allows for experimentation within our public sector organizations is a challenge, and there are some competencies that we identified around it. A second barrier that we talk about is data and infrastructure. AI systems are as good as the data that you can get, as good as the IT systems and infrastructure that you have. In a lot of places, there are connectivity challenges. There are just the equipment is outdated, or the workflows in the internal softwares and so on are outdated. So all this is a big challenge when it comes to AI adoption. Many of you mentioned data and interoperability. Here again, we need better data management processes. I have been working with public sector officials in one of the countries that we were dealing with. They mentioned that they have basically data sets on Excel sheets on individual computers of people who are working. There is no centralized, even a shared space where this data is saved. It's on individual laptops of people working in those organizations. So with that kind of data infrastructure and organization, it's very hard to be interoperable, but also to build any kind of AI systems. A final gap that we saw, which is a barrier, is human resource capacity. As we see, the world is getting increasingly complex, where we are talking about systems thinking, how, for instance, when it comes to AI, it is also engendering some kind of climate and environment related issues. When you're using ChatGPT or any other Gen AI system, it has a huge amount of carbon footprint based on the energy that it is consuming or the water that it is consuming. So we need to be able to have a public sector that is ready to deal with complex challenges. And this requires new skills and capacities. And this requires, obviously, to upskill civil servants at scale around the world. So these are some of the barriers that we've mapped at UNESCO. And based on these barriers, what we've developed is a competency framework. So we look at different domains of competencies. First is around digital planning and design. Then we talk about data use and governance, and then we talk about digital management and execution. And I'll walk into a little bit more detail on each of these. But just to say, the way that this framework was developed was through almost a year-long process of consultations, regional, global, national consultations with government officials, with civil society, with the private sector, to come up with what are the competencies that public sector officials need today. And what we came up with is this kind of a menu of option. I will put the chats link, put the links in the chat in a bit. So when it comes to digital planning and design, we are talking about problem identification and solution. You will see that this framework is very tech agnostic. We call it AI and digital transformation, but when we were doing the mapping, we realized that most of the time when people are talking about digital transformation, they focus on the digital. They will channelize all this discussion to the IT departments, and they forget about the transformation. And this is the transformative or the change management part which actually makes it happen. And so here you will look at competencies, for instance, what kind of problem are we trying to solve? A lot of times we've seen that when you're talking about, for instance, AI, people come with, oh, I have an AI tool and then I will use it to solve XYZ problem. But actually, we need to be able to define what kind of problems are we facing and then explore whether AI is even a tool that can help us do that. I mentioned briefly about systems thinking. Another competency that we talk about is strategic foresight. Now, here again, in the public sector, we need to be ready to anticipate what are the regulatory challenges, what are the social developments, how is technology interacting with society, what are its implications, what do we need to be prepared for. And this is something that we are missing quite a bit. For instance, generative AI in 2022-23, it took us by surprise. And all of a sudden, we had to update regulatory frameworks and discussions around that, for instance, in the European Union's AI Act and so on. So there is a good need for strategic foresight of what kind of trends in technology, but importantly, at the intersection of technology and society are emerging that we need to address. Then, of course, we need to work in an agile manner. So a lot of times we've seen in governments, the way of working is like this waterfall. You have a policy which is adopted, and then there's a 5-year plan, there's a 10-year plan, and so on, which is great to have this kind of a stable vision. But at the same time, there needs to be room for some experimentation and changes. And one of the ways this is happening is, of course, through regulatory sandboxes. Uh, that we are seeing emerging in different parts of the world, which provide an environment for you to test, for instance, your AI solution, and then try to see what are its impacts, and then try to fix the system where there may be problems. And this kind of uh, a way to test it out before you put it out in the markets is an agile way to develop your products and services. I will not go into all the competencies now, but then we also talk about data use and governance, where we are talking about data-driven decision making, open data, and open government, which plays a huge role because there's a big movement around open data and open government, which is producing a lot of data, but this data is all scattered, isolated, or not in the right formats. It is sometimes in PDF documents and so on. So these are some challenges around preparing us for the use of AI in the public sector or digital transformation more broadly. The next chunk in data use and governance is, of course, around privacy and security and what are the legal and regulatory frameworks that we need. And civil servants need to be able to understand what kind of governance mechanisms need to put in place, whether we are talking about privacy or data protection, whether we are talking about AI regulation, if there is any environment to support that or not. We, in the end, in the third competency domain, talk about digital management and execution. And here it's more about people centricity. So instead of developing, say, a public service, which we as bureaucrats are sitting and going to develop it and then launch it and imagine that people will all of a sudden find it extremely useful, this more likely than not will fail, because we are thinking only of us and not about people who are going to use these services. And this is an important skill that public sector officials need to develop, to work with with the users, but people at large who are going to be accessing these products and services. And many of you mentioned leadership. I can give you an example. We were working in a country where the leadership was talking about, yes, we need to do digital transformation, and they had some fantastic documents around it as well. And then when they asked us to do the trainings, there was no one from the leadership which showed us from the training for the trainings. There was no consistent communication around the importance of digital transformation. So it seemed that it was something to put on the agenda because, well, this is something important these days to talk about. But leadership is lived through your actions, and this is lived through communications that the leadership is doing, or how they are prioritizing digital transformation efforts through budget allocations, through town hall meetings where they are actually bringing all the stakeholders together to discuss. And it is not only within the realm of the IT department, which is the biggest challenge that we face when we are talking about digital transformation, because people think, well, this is the IT department which has to deal with it. But actually, it's whole of the organization which needs to play a role when it comes to digital transformation. I'm mindful of the time. I will just flag here, the competency framework is really available as a menu of options. So for each of these competency, you have the kind of skills and knowledge and attitudes that civil servants need to inculcate are available at the level of basic, intermediate, advanced, and AI specific. So we also help countries to tailor this competency framework to their needs through a questionnaire and through in-person workshops and so on. So this was a bit about the competency framework. I will now move into the second bit of my discussion today, which is around where is AI being used. So AI is being used, for instance, in policy making in government. I just wanted to put this very typical policy cycle out there to put out what are the stages in a policy cycle. So we work with agenda setting, we formulate the policies. There is a process of legitimation which involves really consultations so that the process is inclusive and takes into account different stakeholders. Then there's implementation. Then you also evaluate the policy and then you think about, okay, does it make sense? Do we continue it? Do we terminate it? And so on. This has nothing to do broadly with digital transformation, but I just wanted to put it out as a student of public policy that there are different entry points for use of AI across this cycle. I'll talk about some of those now. So when it comes to policy making, one needs to understand what are the issues, for instance, at the agenda setting stage that people are interested in. So you can use AI to do content analysis. You can use AI to do public consultations. For instance, here we are talking about to enhance citizen participation. This can be done through either participatory budget platforms, or this can also be done through platforms which are, for instance, on legislation. Parliament sometimes put out resolutions and bills that they want to discuss and people to vote on and so on. So there you can use AI systems to kind of analyze what people are saying, to cluster some of the thoughts that people have, to classify different forms of input and so on. And this makes analyzing like huge amount of data much easier. So this feeds into the policy cycle process as well. Then you can, of course, use AI to improve public policy decisions, estimate their effects. So a lot of the work in the policy discussions is also around simulation. So if people are building models around, if I allocate X amount of resources to a particular policy, what is it, what is going to be the impact of it. If we change certain parameters, how will the policy change? Just to be very concrete, in Brussels, and we have FARI, which is an institute which is part of our alliance. They are developing digital twins of the transport system of Brussels. And what this allows them to do is, if they change, for instance, where a bus stop or a train stop is positioned, or if they change the frequency of buses, it has a repercussion for the whole transport network of the city, and they can simulate these things real time. So these are ways where AI systems are helping people in policy making processes. I'll just show you an example here, which is coming from Tallinn. Here, cameras were installed in the city to assist in traffic load detection, which allows for better traffic management. And I mean, I come from a city which is extremely problematic. Even to move from 5 kilometers, it can take you 1 hour in Delhi. And if you have more dynamic traffic management, this can help with the fluidity of traffic flows, and AI systems can help you analyze it and help you simulate some of this. A second use of AI is for improving public service delivery. Many of you already mentioned this. So when it comes about chatbots or personal assistants to strengthen access to information, this is really like a low-hanging fruit. You have an AI, you have a website where people are going to access services, but they need some information, and you can have kind of chatbots which can help people access the information that they want in a more easy manner. It can help also with automation of service delivery to businesses and citizens. We have seen these cradle to grave public service delivery platforms emerging across the world, where from develop for the birth certificate to you getting a driving license, to getting your vaccination, to getting your school enrollment, to setting up a business, till the end of your life, you can have access to public services on a single platform, and it automates some of the delivery. The AI systems can help link in information from different backend services that governments are providing. I want to give you an example here. This again comes from experience where we were working with a country, and there was a lot of discussion around how to make businesses access to licensing and so on in government easier, and they wanted to attract a lot of investment and so on. The problem was that the public services where you had to get a license, for instance, if you had to get a banking license or an investment license or a film shooting license, all was scattered around the city, and it was very cumbersome for new people or investors to go through all these bureaucratic processes. So the solution was to set up a one-stop shop where they put all these departments in one room. Now, this is a great idea in on paper, but and I went to this place, and when we saw it in practice, it was an improvement, but it didn't really solve the full problem, because you still had to go to the different public services, produce the same document, get their signature, give all the same documents to the next counter, and basically there was no backend integration in the processes. So the processes behind the offering of these public services were not really thought out, and putting them in the same room didn't solve the problem. So AI systems can help with this kind of interoperability, and to make it easier for citizens to access services and less time consuming and so on. And here there's an example, for instance, in Peru, where you can use this is an example of how the government internally used an AI system to reduce time for procurement. So, as many of you who are working in public administration would know, it takes a lot of time to procure, and we have to estimate the cost of procurement and services. And by using this historical data of public purchases, they were able to estimate future purchases. And this reduced the procurement time from 68 days to 1 day in about 2,000 public entities in Peru. This is an example of how an AI system drove efficiency forward. I'll go a bit quickly on this one, which is on internal management. So you can use AI systems in the public sector to streamline human resource recruitment, uh, allocation of human resources. You can improve financial management and fraud detection. Let me give you an example of the fraud detection bit. So when we were doing this research, we found in for instance, in Brazil, they are using an AI system, and this is a civil society actually, based on the declarations that senators make on their expenses and so on to detect fraud. And this data, since it was publicly available, so hence the importance of open data and open government, they could detect where there were irregularities in procurement and so on, and to detect some kind of frauds. Similarly, you can use AI for procurement management. Not only, I will give you a very specific example. When you are doing procurement notices, there's something called a CPV classifier where you have to decide what is the code assigned to a particular procurement contract. And this allows for your procurement contract to be found by people who are offering those kind of services and so on. But it's very hard because there's a huge library of codes assigned. But what you can do is you can train an AI system to go through your procurement notice, and then it will give you what is the relevant procurement code. This can help build consistency in how procurement is done, helps improve findability of the procurement notice, and improves linking you to potential service providers and so on. So here again, a small example. This is coming from the HR part, where in Sweden they have a robot recruiter which importantly assists recruitment by making it less biased and improving internal competencies to do that. So with this, I will stop on the landscape of how AI can be used in the public sector and quickly turn to the benefits and risks here. So it drives efficiency. It can enhance decision making. And here again, we're talking about data-driven decision making, and hence the competency that I talked about in the public sector, that we need to improve our sense of being able to use data to take decisions. It can help tailor services and products to meet citizens' needs where they are. It can help with fraud detection, improve resource allocation in public sector, and of course, enhance transparency by analyzing large data sets, government expenditures, and so on and so forth. What are the risks? I haven't really talked about these in for now, but for instance, algorithms can perpetuate or amplify biases. So we saw this example of Peru where they're using historical data. One may need to be conscious of if there are some biases in that data. And similarly for recruitment, one needs to be extremely conscious. I can give you an example. For instance, a big tech company was using AI systems to hire people to screen the CVs, and they found that their AI system was consistently demoting CVs of women. And the reason for this was that historically they were hiring more men, and in the CVs of women, for instance, there would be a line like captain of the women's chess team. And since the CV of women were not selected a lot of times, the AI system learned to demote the characteristics which were more often found in the CVs of women. As a result, it was promoting less women in the hiring process. So these are some of the very concrete risks around bias and transparency, bias and fairness. There can be lack of transparency where it's very hard to understand how an AI system is taking decisions. And this is particularly important for the public sector. For instance, in the Netherlands, there was an example where they were using an AI system to decide whether people should get uh, social security benefits or not. And there was lack of transparency in how this thing was done. We need to be able to explain decisions to citizens because ultimately we need to keep the trust in government and enhance it. Then, of course, there are issues around privacy. There are implementation challenges around lack of technical skills or infrastructure to deploy AI systems effectively. And as I talked about, around trust and lack of oversight. I find it extremely frustrating when a bank tells me to talk to their chatbot, which is not giving me any answers, whether it's on the phone or it's on the chatbot. I mean, you need to use AI in a way that helps instead of even drives people away. So with that, I just wanted to stop here and end with just an overview of what we are doing at UNESCO. So we will hear now from our colleague Caroline from the University of Oxford about the MOOC on AI and digital transformation in government. We have launched the Spark AI Alliance, which is what Guilherme mentioned. RESPA is part of it. We would love for the schools in the region to join the alliance as well. And Boyana can very well help you with more information on that. We are developing also a curriculum on AI and digital transformation, and Miriam, who's with us, is helping us develop this curriculum, which can be used as train the trainers module, and you can integrate it in your schools of public administration. We are also developing, it's kind of ready, an AI tools radar to help people get inspired from what kind of AI tools are available in the public sector, judiciary, and media around the world as an observatory. And we also offer regional and national project-based learning modules on AI, which of course we can discuss more as we go along. So with that, thank you so much, and I'll stop here and